just always such a great pleasure, such a great honor to speak at any event where Doug Dirks is actually wearing his pants. I'll let him explain. Your Excellencies, Premier, friends, thank you all so very much for being here tonight. Just before I came up, Minister Buhler, who was sitting next to me, said to me what he always says when he's sitting next to me before we're about to speak at an event. For some reason, he always gets to speak before me. I've never figured out that protocol. But he said to me what he always says, which is, "What are you going to say?" I have no idea what I'm going to say. How long are you going to speak for? But he's always so good. But he also reminded me that last year at this event, I spoke for a very, very, very long time. He says it was because I was the keynote speaker. I just think I may have just spoken for a very, very, very long time. But he also said, and they've all heard it all, don't repeat any of it. So I'm going to try not to. 35 years. That means that Immigrant Services Calgary is, in fact, older than the mayor. That might be what you call wishful thinking. Immigrant Services Calgary is, however, older than the minister, which I think is a remarkable thing. And, you know, I've spoken many, many, many times. 35 years ago, my parents had been in this country for 6 years. And I've spoken many times about my own family story. You know, they came to this country without a thing. They were 30 years old. They didn't know when they would see their family again, communications being what it was then. They didn't know when they'd communicate with their family again. They left my sister, not quite 3 years old, in Africa. And while I was growing up, I often wished they hadn't brought her back. But indeed, she's right in the front row. I'm going to hear it when I get back. Because the next part is, of course, now I'm so happy that they brought her back, and I can't imagine my life if they hadn't. But you imagine that. But the reason I say that story is because that story is not at all atypical. It's the story of so many. The story of so many people who are in this room. I want to share with you just one thought. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to attend the 100th anniversary of a school about 2 kilometers away from here, Connaught School. And I was standing there looking at the kids in the school. I've got my numbers right. About 240 kids who go to that school from 60-odd countries, speak 42 different languages at home. That particular school in downtown Calgary is often the first place that people stop when they come to this country. I met a young man in grade 6 with a beautiful singing voice who was singing in the choir from Ethiopia. And I learned that in his life, he was in grade 6, 11 years old. In his life, he had been to school for 6 months. And I heard some of the stories of these kids and what they had come from. The stories of the most frightening deprivation of war, of violence, of conflict. They came here with their families if they were lucky, without if they weren't, with much less than even my parents came here with 40 years ago. And it was easy to be upset by that, to be touched by that, to be sad, to think about what these kids have been through. But you know what? I wasn't sad, and I wasn't upset, because I looked out at these kids all wearing their matching 100th anniversary of our school t-shirts. And I said, you know what? We've saved these ones. They're going to be just fine. They have the good luck and the good fortune and the good blessing of coming to a place where the community is going to look after them. And they're going to be absolutely fine. They're going to get an outstanding public education. They are going to fix any language deficiencies they have, and they're going to succeed in our community. And then I looked out at the parents who had come for that assembly. And so I didn't talk to the kids at all that day. I talked to the parents. And I said then what I'll repeat now, which is that for a lot of them, they've had incredibly tough times before they came to this country, and they've had incredibly tough times since they've gotten here. And I could not promise that day that they wouldn't have any more tough times. But what I could promise to them was that they did the right thing. They did the right thing not just for their kids, but they did the right thing for themselves. Because they didn't have to defer their dreams. They didn't have to say, I can't work in my profession anymore, but it's okay, my kid is going to school. And it's precisely because of organizations like Immigrant Services Calgary that they can understand that they did the right thing. You know, government policy is incredibly important. It's incredibly important that the federal government have the right immigration policies. It's incredibly important that the provincial government have the right settlement tools in concentration with the federal government, and that we work hard on foreign recognition. It's incredibly important that the city government continue to operate great programs in safety and in social services, as we do, as many of my colleagues from the city of Calgary, I see Katie and Cheryl and Erica and Trevor here doing that kind of work. It's incredibly important that government has the policy. It's incredibly important that organizations like Immigrant Services Calgary have the right programs. But even more important than the policy and even more important than the programs is people. It's a community that understands that our community succeeds when we generously share opportunity with everyone who comes here. It's when we make those one-on-one connections with individuals and help them understand that their dreams are possible, that they don't have to defer their dreams because they're in a new place, in an unfamiliar place. And that's why the Immigrants of Distinction Award is such a big deal. Because think of all the nominees over all the years, think of all the winners over all the years, and you understand that these are people who are making a difference for every single one of those parents in that room at Connaught School, for every single one of those kids, to help them make sure that they can achieve that great promise of our city, that great promise of our province, and that great promise of our country. And that promise is, we're a place where you can live a great life. And you have the ability to live that great life regardless of what you look like, or where you came from, or what funny thing may or may not be on your head. You don't have the heart to tell him it was his face. He's my MLA. We can do that. But that's the promise. That's the promise that says a turbaned Sikh from East Calgary can be a minister in the provincial government before he turns 35. That's the promise that says someone who's an immigrant himself can be the CEO of a great organization like Immigrant Services Calgary, making sure he's helping lots of other people follow the same path he followed. Heck, it's even the promise that says a kid from Marlborough can be mayor. And another kid from East Calgary can become the deputy chief. But that's an incredible promise. It's a promise that we need to be proud of, that we need to fight every single day to protect, and we need to make sure that we are supporting those great organizations and those great people who work every day to make that promise real, and that is exactly what we're doing here tonight. Thank you all.
Sharing a bit of your personal journey with us and your family history and the love of your sister, of course, and your whole family. I think your words were very inspiring tonight. Thank you. And now we'd like to tell you about one of the great silent auction items available. Generously donated by WestJet, you have the opportunity to bid on a return trip for two to any regularly scheduled WestJet destination. So don't forget to check that out.
And just in addition to your program, Minister Bhullar will be